Yo, what is up, everybody? It's JT, and I'm back to you guys with another episode of JT Sports Live. We have a jam-packed episode today. We're going to be talking about Matt Nagy, looking at potentially another quarterback change. We're going to be talking about what to expect from Jameis Winston now that he's going to be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints in replace of injured Drew Brees. DeAndre Baker. What teams could potentially sign DeAndre Baker? There are some rumors circulating around. We're going to be previewing a couple of games as well. Saints-Falcons, Thursday Night Football, Seattle versus Arizona. One of the biggest games being played this week that's going to have a big impact in determining the playoff picture for the NFC. And we're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you guys haven't already, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure that you guys go ahead, like the video, share the live stream with your friends, family, acquaintances on your social media pages. Also, make sure that you follow me on my social media pages. My Instagram and Twitter is both JT_. You guys can go ahead and follow me on those. The link to those will be down in the description down below. And let's get into it, man. So the first thing that we have to talk about Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy is once again considering making another quarterback change. Now, earlier today, somebody asked him about, what is going to be the possibility that he changes quarterbacks again. And he was asked about Mr. Trubisky. Would there be a potential possibility that the Bears could revert back to Mr. Trubisky? Remember that the Chicago Bears benched Mr. Trubisky earlier on this season for Nick Foles. And here's what Matt Nagy said, and I quote, he said, "When you lose 4 games in a row, everything is on the table." Now, both Nick Foles and Trubisky are dealing with injuries. Neither one of those guys are completely 100%. If you guys watched the Monday Night Football game when Chicago lost to Minnesota, Nick Foles got basically laid out during one of the last plays of the game. And it didn't really look all that great. Okay? So, when I look at the Chicago Bears right now, the Chicago Bears are currently 5-5, and Matt Nagy has a lot of pressure. He is feeling that hot seat, okay? And I remember when I used to watch wrestling, WWE a couple of years ago, Michael Cole used to say, "Desperate men do desperate things." And right now, Matt Nagy is desperate. Matt Nagy is trying to do everything he can to not only save his job, but to try to find whatever he can to get the Chicago Bears to the playoffs. Now, quarterback isn't, the whole entire reason why the Chicago Bears have lost 4 games in a row. The offensive line also has not been great neither, but the play calling hasn't been good neither. And once again, for the second straight year in a row, you cannot run the football. And I know David Montgomery is injured, but even when David Montgomery has been healthy, Chicago hasn't really been able to use him all that well in the run game. So I'm looking at this Chicago Bears offense. It's struggling. And Matt Nagy right now, he's trying to figure out what can he do to give this team a spark offensively. He even went as far as giving up play calling duties. So he gave up play calling duties to the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears, and I didn't really see that big of a difference in the offense. The offense still looked the same. It was still stalling, still couldn't keep drives alive, still couldn't sustain drives, still was struggling to move the ball down the football field. This Chicago Bears offense is just pitiful to watch this year. And for Matt Nagy, if Chicago doesn't make it to the playoffs, he knows and we know that he is going to be on his way out. Because Chicago Bears, remind you, had one of the best records in the NFC. They got off to this great start, and now you lose 4 games in a row. I mean, you're going to have no choice but to make a coaching staff change. So, for Matt Nagy right now, considering another quarterback change, I wouldn't rule that out the picture. And I wouldn't blame him if he was to go back to Mr. Trubisky, because it doesn't matter if the offensive line isn't great. Like, you have to find the spark. And maybe Mr. Trubisky being named the starter for the second time this year, maybe that's going to be enough to kickstart the Chicago Bears offense. But it's crazy how much of a downfall Matt Nagy has took during his career as the head coach for Chicago. Remind you that this was the guy who in his first year for Chicago took the Bears to the playoffs. They were a double dunk away from making it to the divisional round, and he was coach of the year that year. Okay? And just the fall from grace. And Chicago's defense is really the only thing that still keeps them around in games. So for Matt Nagy, this offense has to get a spark. And I don't know if Mr. Trubisky or making another quarterback change is going to be able to kickstart that. But for Matt Nagy, you got to do what you got to do, man. So if you go back to Mr. Trubisky, I can't say that I blame you. So, some NFL rumors that are circulating around is that DeAndre Baker is garnering a lot of interest from a lot of teams around the NFL. Now, DeAndre Baker recently had his charges of armed robbery dropped that he had a couple of months ago back in the offseason. And as soon as it was announced that DeAndre Baker's charges were going to be dropped, that he will be able to sign with any NFL team that he wants to, a lot of New York Giants fans got upset. They said, man, it was a dumb move getting rid of DeAndre Baker. You're innocent until proven guilty. And here's why I think the New York Giants made the right decision to release DeAndre Baker. When you're a new head coach, Joe Judge, you have to send a message to the locker room. And what was going on with the DeAndre Baker situation? Okay, maybe the New York Giants didn't want to part ways with DeAndre Baker because you just used a first-round pick on him not too long ago. But when you have a new head coach, you have to send a message to the locker room saying that, hey, listen up. We are not going to tolerate some of those things. So I don't blame Joe Judge and the New York Giants front office and their organization for choosing to move off of DeAndre Baker. And DeAndre Baker wasn't all that great. And you may say, well, JT, it was only one season. Maybe he couldn't improve. Listen, when you draft a cornerback in the first round, most of the time they're either good right away or they're not good at all. Look at Marshawn Lattimore. Look at Denzel Ward. Think about every corner that has been drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. Every single one that has been good has had success right away. And the ones that haven't didn't have good first season. So when you draft a cornerback in the first round, if that corner doesn't show signs of potential or isn't good right away, chances are they're not going to end up having a really good career. So for DeAndre Baker, he's getting a break. First of all, he's getting a second chance. Regardless of what happened, regardless of what was true, what wasn't true, he's getting a second chance at playing in the NFL. And he also gets a chance to hit the refresh on his short NFL career. He gets to go to the team of his choosing. He's going to have the opportunity to play for whoever wants him. Okay, now here are the rumored teams that are interested in DeAndre Baker's services right now. The Cincinnati Bengals, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers, and of course, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, we already know how the Dallas Cowboys are. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of memes circulating around about the Dallas Cowboys having interest in DeAndre Baker. They like having interest in players that have like criminal backgrounds for some reason. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But those are a couple of teams that have interest in DeAndre Baker. Now, DeAndre Baker could be really good with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would really like to see him sign with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would like to see the Jacksonville Jaguars pair him up with CJ Henderson. I think they would have a really good young cornerback tandem if they were to do that. And let's face it, Jacksonville Jaguars should be using their first round pick, if not on a quarterback, on a corner. Because they desperately need some cornerback help and bad. Aside from CJ Henderson, Jacksonville's secondary has not been great this year. So DeAndre Baker getting another chance at the NFL. He's garnering a lot of interest from several NFL teams. I'm really interested in seeing where he's going to go. So, Jameis Winston. Now, Jameis Winston was the starting quarterback for Tampa Bay last year. And I do not know why it says Matt Nagy considered another quarterback change on there, but that's just my fault there. My fault, folks. So, Jameis Winston is going to be the starting quarterback this week for the New Orleans Saints. And for Jameis Winston, this is going to be the first time that he's going to be starting this year for the Saints. And I'm really interested to see how this is going to work out. Because we know Jameis Winston was an enigma last year for Tampa Bay. I mean, he will have some good plays, and then he'll turn around and throw a pick six on the next drive. He was just a walking enigma. And now that he's going to be in Tampa Bay, with pretty much the best team that he's been on during his NFL career, you have Alvin Kamara, you have Michael Thomas, you got Jared Cook, you have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, you have Sean Payton, who's one of the best offensive play callers and offensive minds in NFL history. Jameis Winston is in a great spot to succeed with the New Orleans Saints. And if this works out, New Orleans is going to have their quarterback of the future. Now, some people were sold on the offseason that Jameis Winston was not going to be the backup over Taysom Hill. And I told a lot of people, I said, look, if Taysom Hill was supposed to be the backup quarterback for New Orleans, he would already been the starting quarterback. It would have been no reason to sign Jameis Winston. So for New Orleans, they're looking at Jameis Winston, and this is his tryout. And if New Orleans doesn't want to bring back Jameis Winston as their quarterback of the future, Jameis Winston is going to be auditioning for any other team that's looking for a quarterback in the offseason. So for Jameis Winston, there's a lot of pressure on him to perform. Not only is the New Orleans Saints playoff hopes riding on his shoulders, but they're also trying to get the number one seed. And also, his NFL career is in jeopardy because this is pretty much his last opportunity to remain a starting quarterback in the NFL. So, Jameis Winston, I think he's going to be a perfect fit for New Orleans and for Sean Payton. I think he's going to elevate New Orleans because Drew Brees is a great quarterback. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Don't get me wrong. But what Jameis Winston is going to bring, you're going to have a guy who has a stronger arm than Drew Brees. And you have a guy who's going to elevate these wide receivers around. You have a guy who is going to take shots down the field, which is something that a lot of people have complained about New Orleans offense over the last 2 seasons, is that they don't have or they don't take a lot of shots down the field. Now, I'm not trying to say New Orleans doesn't take shots down the field at all, but they're really selective with how they choose to throw the football down the field when they do. So I think Jameis Winston is going to be a really good fit for New Orleans, and I do think that Jameis Winston is going to be good enough to keep the Saints in the playoff race, and he could potentially get the Saints that number one overall seed in the NFC. Now let's move on to previewing some NFL games. So Thursday Night Football, we have the 6-3 Arizona Cardinals taking on the 6-3 Seattle Seahawks on the road in Seattle. Now this is the biggest game being played this week in the NFL. This is my game of the week. Okay? You look at Seattle right now. Seattle is reeling. Seattle has lost 2 straight games in a row. And it seems like ever since they lost to Arizona a couple of weeks ago in their first matchup, which Arizona won 37-34, Seattle has went downhill. Russell Wilson, for 2 straight games in a row, has turned the ball over 3 or more times. He had 4 turnovers against Buffalo. He had 3 turnovers against the LA Rams last week. And as a matter of fact, Russell Wilson has a total of 11 turnovers over the last 5 games that Seattle has played. That's not good. And Russell Wilson, in my opinion, is no longer in the discussion for NFL MVP. That ship has sailed. The Russell Wilson MVP train has now fallen off the rails. It's time to move on to the Kyler Murray MVP train right now, which has a lot of steam and has a lot of momentum. Kyler Murray has been balling out. He's been playing some really great football for Arizona. And you go back and you watch how Arizona defeated Buffalo last week, 32-30. Basically, they threw a Hail Mary to DeAndre Hopkins. It was like several Buffalo Bills defenders trying to stop DeAndre Hopkins, and he still couldn't be stopped. He still caught the game-winning touchdown for Arizona. So Arizona has a lot of momentum right now. But despite Seattle being on a 2-game losing streak and not really looking all that well over the last couple of weeks, Seattle is still a favorite to win this game by 3 points. So what that tells you is that Vegas still believes in Seattle, and Vegas believes that Seattle is going to somehow figure out things and get this ship back in the right direction. Because if Seattle loses this game, they're going to drop to 6-4. And not only are they going to lose their potential spot at winning this division, but they're also going to maybe miss out on trying to get that number 1 overall seed in the NFC. Remind you that the NFL playoff format has changed. There are now 7 teams, and only 1 team will have a bye. So that bye week is really important, especially when you're Seattle, when you're really banged up. You're having a lot of players that are missing time of injuries. Seattle really needs that number 1 overall seed. So my biggest question is going to be, is Russell Wilson going to be able to take care of the football? Now, ball security has never really been that big of an issue concerning Russell Wilson. And that just goes to show you how crazy 2020 is. I never thought that we would be saying this, but for Seattle to win this game, Russell Wilson has to take care of the football. Crazy how 2020 has been this year. Russell Wilson, is he going to be able to take care of the football? Is he not going to be able to take care of the football? That is the question, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not mistaking you. That is a big concern heading into this game, because 11 turnovers over the last 5 games, a big reason why Seattle lost the last 2 games has been because of Russell Wilson turning over the football. Now, Seattle needs to be able to contain Kyler Murray, because when you allow Kyler Murray to get outside the pocket, a lot of bad things happen for your defense. You saw it last week against the Buffalo Bills. Kyler Murray got outside the pocket. He threw a prayer to DeAndre Hopkins, and he came down with it. Okay? And it's not just his ability to throw the football on the run. It's also his ability to run with the football as well. So you need to keep Kyler Murray contained in the pocket. Do not allow Kyler Murray to dictate the outcome of this game. If you are going to want Kyler Murray to beat you, you're going to want Kyler Murray to beat you from inside the pocket. Now, he is capable of beating you from inside the pocket as well, but you rather him beat you throwing the ball inside the pocket versus him making plays outside the pocket with the ability to run the football and his ability to throw on the run. Now, Tyler Lockett shredded Arizona secondary the last time they played in week 7. He had 15 receptions for 200 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging 13.3 yards per reception in their last matchup. Now, the Cardinals need to do a better job of making sure that Seattle doesn't have a lot of big plays, because Seattle is the offense that is pretty much dictated on having big plays in the passing game. They're not really all that great running the football. Carlos Hyde has missed the last couple of games with an injury. So hopefully he's going to be able to return this game. And hopefully Seattle's going to have some semblance of a running game, because they're desperately needed right now. But for Arizona, if you're able to limit the big plays, you're going to have a really good chance of winning this game. Look at what the LA Rams were able to do last week. What the Rams did last week was they kept everybody in check. You saw DK Metcalf got shut down by Jalen Ramsey. It wasn't really a lot of big plays for Seattle last week. And big plays are a big part of the Seattle Seahawks offense, because they're not good on third down. As a matter of fact, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL when it comes to their ability to move the chains on third down. So when you have a team that's not moving the ball and keeping drives alive on third down, you have to ask yourself, what is that team doing? How is this team still winning games? Well, the reason for that is because Seattle has a lot of big chunk plays. They win on the early downs. They win on first down. They win on second down. So if you're able to limit those big plays in the passing game for Seattle, and force Seattle to move the ball down the field by constantly having to convert on third down and third down situations, you're going to be in good shape if you're Arizona. So you have to limit the big plays in the passing game for Seattle. And for the Seattle Seahawks, once again, we don't know the status of their 2 starting cornerbacks, Shaquille Griffin and Quentin Dunbar. Both of those guys are listed as questionable for this Thursday night matchup. So we don't know if any of those guys are going to be able to play. So this game is going to be a shootout once again. I doubt this game is going to be low scoring, because you look at Seattle's defense is not good. So even though Seattle has been able to get pressure on the quarterback a lot more lately than they have at the start of the season, their secondary still stinks. And even with Shaquille Griffin and Quentin Dunbar coming back, yeah, that's going to give them a little bit of a boost. But I don't think it's going to be all that big of a boost that a lot of Seattle Seahawks fans are thinking, because remind you that when Shaquille Griffin and Quentin Dunbar were healthy and when Jamal Adams was healthy, Seattle's defense was still allowing teams like Dallas and Atlanta to shred them up. they were still aligned nearly almost 500 yards per game. So even when Seattle was fully healthy on defense, their defense still wasn't all that great. Now, maybe their defense has kind of figured things out. Maybe so, maybe not. I doubt it, because it's the same defense that got shredded by Buffalo and Josh Allen a couple of weeks ago. So the team that I'm going to take to win this game, I am going to take the Seattle Seahawks. The reason why I'm going to take Seattle to win this game is because, first of all, I doubt Seattle is going to lose 3 straight games in a row. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I'm just saying I'm going to have a hard time seeing Seattle drop 3 straight in a row. I think Seattle, despite how bad they may be defensively, is just too good of a team to lose 3 straight games in a row. And if they lose 3 straight games in a row, they're not only going to kind of be one game back when it comes to winning this NFC West division, but they're going to be a team that could be easily on the outside looking in of the playoff race if they continue on this downward spiral. Okay, because if Seattle drops to 6-4, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Seattle to make it to the playoffs. And they're going to have a lot of bad momentum going their way. So I think this is a must-win game for Seattle, because this is a game that Seattle must win to get their season back on track. And I hate saying that games are a must-win, because every game in the NFL is a must-win. Every team must win. But for Seattle, this is a game that is more important for them in terms of winning than it is for Arizona. Because if Arizona wins this game, they're pretty much going to have control of the NFC West, and they're going to be in that conversation for that number 1 overall seed in the NFC. And if Seattle wins, they're going to be in a similar situation. So I think Seattle needs to win this game more, because I still think that Arizona is going to be in the playoffs regardless if they win this game or not. But for Seattle, when you look at how their season has been going over the last couple of weeks, they need this game as a momentum boost to get their season right back in the right direction. So the next game that we have to talk about, the Atlanta Falcons going on the road to face the 7-2 New Orleans Saints. Now, Atlanta is coming off a bye week. Now, Atlanta has been really good under interim head coach Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris looks like a second coming of the football gods for Atlanta. Because under Dan Quinn, Atlanta failed to finish games. They were constantly giving up leads in the fourth quarter. Well, under Raheem Morris, Atlanta is 3-1. And the only game they lost was to the Detroit Lions, which was pretty much on Todd Gurley because he forgot to knee the football. Instead of kneeing the football, he just went ahead and scored the game-winning touchdown, which gave Detroit one more possession to go down the field to win the game. And we already know how Atlanta's secondary has been for the entire season. Hasn't really been that great. So that pretty much has been the only loss that Raheem Morris has suffered since he has taken over as the interim head coach for Atlanta. Now, this is going to be Raheem Morris' first true test. Because the last 4 games that Atlanta has played has been against teams that haven't really been that great. So this is going to be the first team that Atlanta is going to play that, with Raheem Morris as the interim head coach, that's actually good. Now, the Saints are going into this game 7-2. Coming off a 27-13 win against the San Francisco 49ers last weekend. And Drew Brees is not going to be playing in this game. For those of you guys who don't know already, Drew Brees is going to be missing at least the next 3 to 4 weeks due to rib fractures and a collapsed lung. Brutal. So Jameis Winston is going to be the guy who is going to get the start at quarterback, most likely for the New Orleans Saints. And they're pretty much going to rotate him and Taysom Hill. I think Taysom Hill is going to come in for a good portion of the game at quarterback because his ability to run the football, like same thing that they do with Drew Brees when Drew Brees would start. You know how sometimes they'll take Drew Brees out of the game and they'll insert Taysom Hill on certain packages. I still think nothing's really going to change in terms of Taysom Hill's role in the offense. Maybe he may actually throw a little bit more passes, but Jameis Winston should be the guy who should be the starting quarterback for New Orleans headed into this game. And you're looking at Atlanta Falcons secondary that has improved a little bit, but is still really shaky and still really isn't all that great. So how is Jameis Winston going to perform as his first game as the official starter for New Orleans? Now, last week when he took over in the second half for Drew Brees, he was 6-10, threw the ball for 63 passing yards. At least when I was watching, he looked really good. Now, a couple of articles I was reading for some reason kept saying that he had a subpar performance. I don't get how Jameis Winston had a subpar performance against the 49ers. Like, who writes these articles? No offense, but how did Jameis Winston have a subpar performance against the 49ers? He came in the second half. He took New Orleans down the field and the red zone several times. So I don't get how Jameis Winston had a subpar performance. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. That, allow me to rant for a little bit. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. How did Jameis Winston have a subpar performance against the 49ers? He came in unexpectedly and performed really well. Okay? So for New Orleans, Jameis Winston has a lot of weapons at his disposal. You have Michael Thomas, who is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He's still trying to get back into the form that he was before he suffered an injury week 1 before Tampa Bay that kept him out for a good part of the season. So you got Michael Thomas, you got Emmanuel Sanders, you got Jared Cook, you got Alvin Kamara in the backfield, you have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and you have Sean Payton as your head coach, who is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. Jameis Winston has all the keys to the car to be successful for the New Orleans Saints. And this is a big opportunity for Jameis Winston, because this is pretty much Jameis Winston's last chance to not only maybe become the franchise quarterback for the Saints, but if the Saints choose to not bring back Jameis Winston, this is going to be his chance to audition for any other team that's going to be looking for a quarterback and free agency come the offseason. So for Jameis Winston, there is a lot of implications for him being the starting quarterback in New Orleans. And I do feel like Jameis Winston is good enough to get the Saints to the playoffs. And not only that, I think he's going to be good enough to keep the Saints around that conversation to potentially have that number 1 overall seed in the NFC. And I may be a little bit biased, which I am, because you guys know that I am the biggest Jameis Winston fanboy in the world. Jameis Winston is my favorite NFL player of all time. I love Jameis Winston. I have several Jameis Winston jerseys in my closet. If I wasn't live streaming, I would pull them out right now and show you guys. But Jameis Winston is a really good fit for that New Orleans Saints offense. And it may not seem like that, because you think about Drew Brees and how he runs that offense. You know, he's methodical. He doesn't take a lot of shots downfield, only when he really has to. But I think that Jameis Winston is going to be really good in this offense as well, because here's why. There hasn't really been a coach that has properly developed Jameis Winston. When Jameis Winston was coming out of college, what was the knock on Jameis Winston? He was too reckless with the football. So what do you do when you draft a reckless quarterback? Well, you hire a head coach and Bruce Arians, who likes to throw the football downfield, who is just as aggressive as Jameis Winston, okay? So, I mean, you're in for a recipe for disaster. Don't even get me started on the head coach for Tampa Bay who came before Bruce Arians. Can't really think of his name right now. Dirk Cutter. Dirk Cutter is what his name was. He was Jameis Winston's second head coach after they got rid of Lovie Smith. So, you bring in 2 head coaches who their offensive philosophy is throwing the football downfield, being aggressive. And Jameis Winston never really properly developed. I think him going to the New Orleans Saints, playing for Sean Payton, is going to help him out tremendously in his career, because Sean Payton is a guy who, yeah, he's a guy who may like to take shots deep down the field every once in a while, but his offense isn't predicated solely based on the big play. His offense is based on ball control, taking care of the football, and taking what the defense gives you. And that's why I think Jameis Winston is going to have a great chance to succeed with the New Orleans Saints, because Sean Payton is going to develop him. Sean Payton's going to be like, look, man, we don't need you to take all of these unnecessary shots down the field. That's not what our offense is. This is a ball control offense. We want to take what the defense gives us. Doesn't matter if it's 2 yards. Doesn't matter if it's 1 yard. We want to get in rhythm in the passing game, and we want to keep the clock moving, and we want to be methodical and have a methodical approach on offense. We want to move the ball down the field. We don't need to score a touchdown in one play. We just want to move the ball down the field and sustain drives. And that's what Sean Payton's offense is all about. And I think Jameis Winston, now that he's going to be going to a coach that basically says no risk it, no biscuit, I think this is going to be really good for Jameis Winston. And Jameis Winston never really had a team that he's played on during his time in Tampa Bay that has truly been balanced. Tampa Bay has always been a team that, over the last couple of years since Jameis Winston was the starting quarterback, that has always been throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. Not really a lot of emphasis in terms of running the football. Also, remind you that Jameis Winston has played behind some not so stellar offensive lines. And you see how that's working out for Tom Brady this year. The offensive line has improved a little bit, but still not all that great. So I'm really excited about this game. I'm really excited about seeing my guy Jameis Winston and what he's going to do as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And for the Atlanta Falcons, if they want to win this game, you're going to have to get pressure on Jameis Winston. And you're going to have to force Jameis Winston to become the Jameis Winston that he was when he was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, throwing pick sixes, getting frustrated, mix up your coverages, and try to throw him off guard, okay? Because if you give Jameis Winston all day to throw in the pocket, he is going to shred you. And Atlanta has been pretty decent when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. They haven't been great, but they haven't been bad in the pass rushing department. They're pretty much in the middle of the pack in terms of being able to get pressure on the quarterback. So I'm really excited about this game. The team I'm going to take to win this game, I'm taking the Saints to get the victory. I think the Saints win this game 34-21 is my final score prediction in this game. I think Atlanta is going to put up points on this New Orleans Saints defense. I know the Saints defense has started to kind of pick things up over the last couple of weeks. I gave the New Orleans Saints a lot of flack over the last couple of weeks about their lack of defense and how poor their defense has been. But this defense, now that they're starting to get healthy, has been really good. So I'm taking the Saints to get the victory here. Next team, or next game that we have to talk about, the 3-5-1 Philadelphia Eagles traveling on the road to face the 6-3 Cleveland Browns. Now, I have a lot to say about this game. This is probably going to be one of the longest previews that I have done so far this season. So the Eagles lost to the New York Giants 27-17. And my block of the week last week was the New York Giants, taking the under for the New York Giants to pull off the upset against Philadelphia. I won a lot of people a good amount of money, and I bet on that game myself with my friends. It was a Philadelphia Eagle fan. I said, look, man, the Giants are going to beat you. He was like, man, JT, you're tripping, man. How much you want to bet on it? I said, put $50 that you guys lose to the New York Giants. Well, Sunday comes around, and the Eagles lose to the New York Giants. And this is how crazy 2020 is. Who would have thought that the New York Giants at any point in the season would have control of the NFC East? That's just how bad this division is. And I've been telling a lot of people, I said, look, the Giants are not a bad football team. Their last couple of games have been decided by one possession or less. So if Daniel Jones can take care of the football and not turn the football over, New York could win a good majority of those one possession games. And that's what Daniel Jones has done so far. Daniel Jones in games that he doesn't have any turnovers is 2-1 as a starter, I believe. Or like 3-1 or something like that. Don't really know the stats on the top of my head. But I do know when Daniel Jones is to turn the football over, the New York Giants win games. Alright? So Philadelphia, if you're an Eagles fan, you look at that game, you say, JT, how did we lose? Go to the box score. You're looking at team yardage. Okay, pretty fair. No turnovers. How did we lose, JT? Well, you were 0-9 on third down. The name of the game is being able to keep the chains moving and being able to keep drives alive. And if you can't convert on third down, how do you expect to move the ball down the field unless you're Seattle and you get in all these big plays in the passing game, which Philadelphia isn't? So Philadelphia was 0-9 on third down. When you're 0-9 on third down, that means that the majority of the time, you're not going to be able to control time possession. Because being able to control time possession means that you're moving the ball consistently and you're keeping drives alive on third down. And Seattle wasn't able to do that. That's why they got dominated time possession by the New York Giants, who had the ball for 31 minutes and 43 seconds compared to Philadelphia having the ball for 28 minutes and 17 seconds. So time possession was a really big reason for why the New York Giants won that game. And their third down defense was solid. And this is a Philadelphia Eagles team that hasn't really been all that great on third down this season. So you're looking at the Cleveland Browns. They were in a dogfight with the Houston Texans. And I'm not really surprised that they were in a dogfight with the Houston Texans. They only beat them 10-7. But the Browns are still a 3.5 point favorite to win this game. And what that tells you is that Vegas doesn't have a lot of confidence in the Philadelphia Eagles. And I don't have a lot of confidence in the Philadelphia Eagles neither, because when you get outplayed by the New York Giants, like, listen, Philadelphia just got flat out outplayed by the New York Giants. This is a team that, remind you, is supposed to be rebuilding. Okay? But since the division is just that bad, the New York Giants can only take the opportunity that they are presented in front of them. So you look at Philadelphia, their defense is a lot better than what a lot of people are giving them credit for. But this offense with Carson Wentz has been sloppy at times. And Carson Wentz has really played great. Carson Wentz has been really up and down. And one of my biggest gripes with the national media is that a lot of the people in the national media keep making excuses for Carson Wentz poor performance. They keep saying, well, Carson Wentz has to, he's just trying to make too many things happen. Like, just be honest, let's just say that Carson Wentz has not been great this season and leave it at that. Let's not be contradictory every single week saying that, oh, Carson Wentz is great, oh, Carson Wentz is bad. Listen, the Philadelphia Eagles are 3-5-1 right now because of Carson Wentz up and down performance this year. He has not been consistent. So let's stop giving Carson Wentz passes for his lack of great play. Let's hold Carson Wentz accountable. Just like how we need to hold Russell Wilson accountable for costing Seattle Seahawks games. Like, let's stop making excuses for Carson Wentz and Russell Wilson. All right? They're losing football games because they're not taking care of the football and they're not playing good football. All right, stop being so. This is what a lot of people have. Like, they have so much bias because of what a quarterback has accomplished in the past. Nobody gives a hoot if Carson Wentz almost won NFL MVP a couple of years ago when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. That was in the past. Look at what is in front of you right now. Carson Wentz is an up and down quarterback. Right now, he has to be in the middle of the pack. And for all you guys watching, would you want Carson Wentz to be your quarterback right now with how he's played? I don't think so. I like to have consistency and stability at quarterback, and I'm not really seeing that out of Carson Wentz. I know he's trying to make things happen, but still at the end of the day, that's no excuse for how he's played this season. People are trying to make it seem like Carson Wentz doesn't deserve any of the blame for the Philadelphia Eagles being 3-5-1. Carson Wentz has caused the Philadelphia Eagles a good amount of games that they've lost so far this season. And for Cleveland, I'm looking at the Philadelphia Eagles off the line that isn't great. So Myles Garrett could have a field day. Myles Garrett right now is entering this game with 9.5 sacks. He is most definitely going to be in the conversation for a Defensive Player of the Year like he was last year before he got suspended for the rest of the season after he bopped Mason Rudolph in the head with the helmet. And I don't know how the Philadelphia Eagles are going to game plan and try to stop him. I think this is going to be a game that Myles Garrett comes in and he dominates. Sort of like how Aaron Donald dominated Seattle last week. He was a one-man wrecking crew. And I think that is going to be a big reason for Cleveland making an argument for why they can win this game. Now, if Philadelphia wants to win this game, they need to give Miles Sanders the ball. Give Miles Sanders the ball. Hand him the football off. Give him the ball in the passing game. Just give Miles Sanders the ball, period. Because it seems like when this offense is running through Miles Sanders and you're not really allowing Carson Wentz to do whatever he wants to, this offense is pretty solid. All right, so this offense, and I don't know if Doug Peterson is blind, but this offense operates a lot better when it's running through Miles Sanders and it's not running through Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has a lot of talent. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, but for right now, this offense is more efficient and they're at their best when it's operating through Miles Sanders, when you're able to get the run game going, when you're able to get Miles Sanders the ball in the passing game. This offense is good when Miles Sanders has the ball in his hands. So Philadelphia needs to give the ball to Miles Sanders if they want to have a chance at winning this game. And the Philadelphia Eagles are 1-3 on the road. Cleveland is 5-1 at home. So Philadelphia hasn't been great on the road. And for Cleveland, are they going to be able to defend their home turf? Now, for Cleveland, they currently are tied with the Baltimore Ravens for second place in the AFC. And if Cleveland wins this game, you're not only going to be in that playoff conversation because right now they're kind of tied with Las Vegas and Miami. But if they win this game, they continue to still be in that playoff conversation. All right? And if Baltimore loses to Tennessee, they could jump over Baltimore, and Baltimore could be the team that a lot of people are going to be looking at and saying, hey, is Baltimore going to make the playoffs or not? So Cleveland is a 3.5-point favorite heading into this game. I am going to take the Browns to win this game, and I'm going to take them to cover. I think the Browns beat Philadelphia by a pretty good margin. I think Philadelphia loses this game to Cleveland. 14-27 is my final score prediction in this game because, look, Philadelphia was 0-9 on third down last week against the New York Giants. All right? I don't have confidence in Philadelphia's offense. I definitely don't have any confidence in Carson Wentz because you don't know what play you're going to get out of Carson Wentz from week to week. One week he plays well, the other week he's playing inconsistent. Like, it's just too much inconsistency with Philadelphia. I don't care if Philadelphia is getting back healthy. This team still doesn't look good. They don't look well coached, and Doug Peterson's a pretty doggone good coach, but this team doesn't look good at all. This defense is pretty solid, but the defense can only do so much when your offense is stalling out and it's 0-9 on third down. So I don't trust Philadelphia. I'm going to put my faith in Cleveland. I think Cleveland gets the job done. I think Cleveland ends up covering the spread, and I think they win outright, and I think they move to 7-3 on the year. Give me the Browns to win this game. So this is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. I'm really sorry for the Jameis Winston graphic thingy. The little graphic mistake. I know a lot of people are probably going to roast me once I upload this live on YouTube. I'm going to have to put that in the comment section. I'm going to be like, there was a mistake with the Jameis Winston graphic, but you guys still get the point overall about Jameis Winston. So when I upload the video, I'm going to have to change that as well. So I appreciate all you guys coming in and watching this. Make sure that if you are new to the channel that you go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure that you guys check out the JT Sports Podcast, available on all platforms, available on Apple, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. All you got to do is go to the search, type in the JT Sports Podcast, and it should pop up. Leave a 5-star review if you listen to it on Apple Play or iTunes Podcast or whatever. Also, make sure that you guys go ahead, like this live stream, share with your friends, family, acquaintances on all your social media platforms. And I appreciate you guys for watching. And make sure that you guys are going to be here tomorrow because I'm going to be live streaming again around this time tomorrow at around 5 o'clock, 5:30. So you guys take care. And thank you guys for watching another episode of JT.